Hey guys, so now we're moving into our squat series. Now the squat is a fundamental movement pattern for the human body. It's also where we get into the real sexy side of coaching. We get a lot of feedback from where our coaches move through squat patterns and the various different squat patterns there are, the progressions and regressions. But it's important we don't accelerate our clients and the people we work with too fast. We're taking them on the journey. It's important that we teach them how to move well before we start loading, both anteriorly and posteriorly. We get a chance now to look at the whole kinetic chain as a whole, all right? So we're looking at ankles, knees, hips, and shoulders, and how we kinetic link that all together, all right? Through the core that we've learned in the previous series. Firstly, if we look at the ankles, we get a lot of feedback with what goes on from the floor, because the floor is our point of contact, all right? So we get a lot of ground force reaction here, and a lot of our movement compensations are based around the ankle complex. So a couple of things we're looking for as we go into dorsiflexion and plantarflexion at the ankle is the foot inverting or everting to try and create that range, that false range, and can we recruit the floor in order to generate some force? So a nice little cue here, just in terms of teaching Jens here, our client for today, how to recruit the floor and how to use it to best suit us. So if we place this piece of paper just under the big toe, we talk about this tripod foot. So we're looking at 3 points of contact, the heel, the big toe, and the little toe. We want Jens to grip the floor with his foot. Grip the floor in particular with his big toe. So by gripping the floor now and recruiting the foot, we have a look at the middle arch here. I can just try and pull away the bit of paper, and I can see here that I'm not able to get it away. All right, so it's a cool little game here just to teach them how to recruit the floor. A lot of people are good at engaging with the ankle, but we lose the big toe. All right, so there's the ankle, big toe, little toe, there's our tripod foot. That's our 3 points of contact, and we need that nice and strong with the floor. When we look at our foot positioning in terms of the squat, we like to start with a setup of roughly, now everyone's different with regards to limb length and also mobility, but roughly inside of their ankles in line with the outside of their shoulders. That's our starting point, and we can move out from there. We then want them to set up with their toes facing forward to begin with, to give the perception, or so they can see where their ankles are. If we start with this external rotated foot, when we drop into it, we think our feet are really wide, but our heels aren't necessarily where we need them. So we set the heels, then we set the toes, about 10 to 15 degrees. It just allows us a little bit more range around the ankle and the hip. When we look at the knees, so the next point in the kinetic chain, a lot of people are going to drop into sort of knee valgus. So if Jens just drops through, it's his first time squatting. If he just drops through a couple of squats, we're probably going to start seeing things like this. The ankles are collapsing in, the knees are collapsing in. There's not much tension being created through his whole body because he's never had to move through this pattern. The last time he did something like this was when he collapsed onto the sofa to watch some TV and eat some pizza. All right, we're now asking him to recruit these muscles and create some tension. So if he stands back up from the squat, we've addressed the ankle, okay? So we've got our 3-point stance. We're now looking at the knees. So a nice little tool here, get hands-on with your client. As he drops down, I'm gonna try and drive his knees in. I want him to try and recruit his glute medius and his glutes to try and drive his knees out. Now he can start to create some tension around adductors, around hips, and drive back up, Jens, recruit the floor, perfect. So now we've taught him about the foot and about the ankle. We can now address the hip. The hip is automatically going to be engaged by that slight engagement, that slight driving out of the knees. And we'll also be able to see any asymmetry, any shift left and right as we move around Jens. So the key things going from the hip into the core here. We talked about that anti-flexion extension, and we discussed the brace. So he understands the brace, he understands the breathing involved with the brace, and he understands now how to connect the movement as we go down the chain and from the chain back up to the core. When we look at the chest, we're always talking about a big chest, and we're looking for a neutral spine. So in a big chest, all we're looking for is the space between his navel and his sternum here to remain the same. If this closes or extends at any stage, we know that we've lost the brace. That should all become very clear to the client in terms of what we're looking for in the kinetic chain. But as it's their first time squatting, they're probably going to lose a lot of what goes on here. So let's just pick a couple of key things, take the lowest hanging fruit to begin with, and remember we're taking them on a squatting journey when we look at the squat. So we pick the lowest hanging fruit, focus on a couple of points, let's get a win from every session that we do with them, and then we can move on. So if we look at the first variation of our squat, so where we want to try and start with, we want to see where the mobility lies and whether it's a mobility or a motor control issue. So first of all, looking at mobility, a nice safe variation here is the box squat. So we're going to set up the ankles, set up the feet as we've discussed. Jens is going to create some tension with his breath in the brace, and he's going to drive his hips back, breaking the hips and knees at the same time to touch the box lightly and drive back up. We're also going to get some deformation and reformation of his glutes as he touches the box, which is also good stimulus for the glutes to learn how to activate. So if we just drop through 3 reps, we'll be moving around as the coach, just making sure there's not too much shifting. It's a nice controlled tempo, 2 seconds down, 2 seconds up. Keeping that nice big tall chest. touching the box, driving up, engaging his glutes. Jen's moved very well through that pattern there. So now we can progress to the next progression and we can start to look at increased mobility. So we'll lose the box. And we're just going to look at a simple air squat. I'm going to bring the bit of paper back in just to cue him to re-engage through here. So we're looking to really recruit the floor, screw our heels into the floor. And he's now just going to drop through a little bit more range. The box isn't there anymore, so he needs to learn to trust himself to sit back and then drive back through. So I'll give him a little cue here with the feet, just check that's on as he drops through this squat. Perfect, I've got that there. I'm then going to check his knees as he drives away. So drive up, drive the knees out, one more through there. Perfect, and now I can start moving around just to check his hips. We're staying nice and symmetrical, and we're getting some great range. Perfect, nice neutral spine. Remember, your client's mobility will always be determined by their ability to keep a neutral spine through their squatting posture. Let's now apply some load. So our next progression here is going to be the goblet squat. So we're now loading the body anteriorly from the front. There's going to be a lot going on at the back as well because the thoracic spine is having to engage itself to maintain the neutral and his core is having to work hard to maintain this anterior core here. So as he picks up the kettlebell, we like to teach here at the SCA the kettlebell being held by the horns, trying to rip the horns apart and break the kettlebell with a nice vertical elbow here. From there, he's going to take a nice big deep breath in and brace the core. He's going to break at the hips and knees, sitting back, driving the knees wide, sitting into the space he's created, driving up, back through the heels, and engaging his glutes. Just drop through 2 more reps there, please, Jens. Perfect. Nice neutral spine, great depth. His mobility is determined by the ability to maintain neutral, which he's got throughout, driving back up. Perfect. So if they're feeling good, we can now look to challenge them one further progression with the kettlebells. We're going to go into a dual kettlebell front rack squat. Our front rack now is challenged because we're isolating left and right. We're having to work harder through our anterior core. We're having to work harder through our T-spines to maintain some scaption engagement here. All right, and the load is obviously increased. Perfect, so we've got this nice crank in the wrist on as we've got the kettlebells, nice vertical elbow. We're never going to lean back as we drop into the squat. We always want to make sure we get this brace. If we load our clients from the front anteriorly, you're going to see them naturally try and kick towards their lumbar spine. Make sure we keep them nice and tall with their shoulders stacked above their hips. So we get a nice big deep breath in, engage the scaps, break at the hips and knees, sit into the space we're creating, drive back through, recruit the floor, engage our hips nice and tight. Remember, we want hip extension and not lumbar extension. One more rep. Drive back through heels. Perfect, relax. So there's a nice little squat series. We've taken him from the box squat through to the air squat to test mobility, and then we've started to load the body, and we can see there that he's ready for some further progressions. Mobility is not an issue with Jens, so it's now just about motor control and his ability to cater the load.